we are not alone.
These are supposed to be some of the most verified images of giants.
People who do meditation for 60 days will lengthen their telomeres.
Soon we'll get results, and we'll let you know right here on Beyond Belief. Things seem to be changing in the field of ufology.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
That's priceless.
Isn't that amazing?
Tesla wanted free energy, and look what happened to him.
Plenty of evidence to show that they're real. The real question is how and why.
There were Egyptian hieroglyphs out in the outback of Australia.
In Australia. What are the possibilities? Mars was inhabited, and these were built. We almost can't duplicate today. These are amazing topics. What if there was something like at Area 51 deep underwater?
They were killed by some animal.
Believe me, we're just getting started. I'm George Norrie, and we here at Gaia are committed to revealing the truth.
And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, Paul Hamden with us, and later on, Cyan will join us. They're both lifelong contactees of the ZETA race and have clear conscious recall of their contact, which begins that they work with in these beings that they are. They are both deep trance mediums working with spirit guides to assist others. Paul's earliest memories of being visited by the Zetas are from when he was 18 months old. Cyan's earliest memories of contact with the Zetas are from 4 years old, where she was introduced to a small boy of a similar age. She met the same boy on board a craft several years later. This boy ended up being Paul. Both she and Paul have the same shared memory of time on board craft, as well as many other shared and separate experiences on craft being with the Zetas. First of all, here's Paul with us. Paul, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Looking forward to this as well. How far back do you remember this episode when you were 4 years old?
I've got very, very good recall. I remember seeing the Zetas, as a child. I'd often go outside at night, looking at the sky, sort of talking to these beings. Of course, back then, there was no TV that we had. There was no internet. Why, I sort of managed to be talking to these beings that I wasn't even aware that they were extraterrestrials at that age, of course. But obviously as I got older, I realized what was going on.
Can you tell us how this started for you, Paul? What happened?
Yeah, for sure. It was probably about when I was 18, I was in Melbourne in Australia, and I was with a friend, and we were in a block of units, about three stories up. And I was standing at the kitchen window looking out, and a craft appeared. It was about 7 or 8 meters across. And I said to my friend that was helping me do the dishes, "Can you see that?" And he said that he could. And then the side of the craft was only about sort of 8-10 meters away from the window. The side went clear, and 2 extraterrestrials appeared through the side of the craft. And some of our friends had come to the house or the unit where we were. We let them in, and they came over, and they could see the beings as well. So this craft actually sat there for about 5 minutes, and we were able to see these beings quite clearly. We didn't even know, we'd never seen anything like this. Then when I was about 23, I woke up one morning getting ready for work, and it was the lights were off. I got dressed. I walked into the kitchen. As I reached out to turn the light switch on, I heard a rustle in the corner, a noise, and this being lunged at me and grabbed me by the left arm, and I was pretty strong, and I started wrestling with it, and another being jumped onto the other side of me, and then I was sort of worried then, and then the third being jumped on me, and I went down, and that's all I remember. And I woke up thinking that it was a dream until I looked down and I realised I had my clothes on and my shirt was on backwards. When I was about 40 years old, spirits started coming, and I had no idea what was going on. It was just a complete disaster. And I was thinking to myself, could this get any worse? And then as I got much older, about 48, I started to see the extraterrestrials moving around my house. It was as if somehow the fabric or the energy around me started to shift to the point where I was now able to see them. But I couldn't contact them. I couldn't talk to them. I knew that they were coming into the house, but I had no way to be able to sort of evidence that contact. I started to develop also as a medium quite heavily at that time, doing deep trance work. And I had a group of people that would come to the house and sit with me, and they were telling me that they were seeing this extraterrestrial face over the top of mine. And so we put up some sort of small video camera, and we were able to record this face that was turning up. Someone said to them, what they were speaking through me to the people. Someone said, "Look, if you're who you say you are, then you should be able to bring a craft. You aliens say that you fly around in craft." And I thought that was a great idea. And the extraterrestrial said, "Yes, we'll bring a craft." And so for about 2 weeks, every time I sat, they would come and they would talk about bringing the craft. And I got to the point where I thought it wasn't going to happen. And I'd organised for a group of people to be there when the craft came because I wanted evidence. I didn't want to have to start taking pictures. I wanted testimony for people to see it. What happened was we had about 20 people with me. We were in a big circle sitting on a property, and the steam rolled in, and all the dogs were howling on the property. It was massive, this property. And the craft landed and the beings came out and they walked around everybody. And a lot of the people that were there were sort of anaesthetised. There was something going on where they were not able to actually, interact with the beings at all. They were able to sit down and keep their eyes closed, and other people had their eyes open. But then some of them, and myself included, I had my eyes open. The beings actually came and put their hands on our shoulders, so they were walking around us. The ground was really rocky, and so you could hear anybody walking around. There was about 8 or 10 beings walking around behind us. And then after that occurrence of the craft coming, Kathleen Martin contacted me and asked the ZETAs would heal her. And so we asked the ZETAs, they said they would, and then 3 days later, they took Kathleen onto a craft and they healed her permanently. That was really good of them to do that.
Paul, about how many contact moments have you had with the ZETAs?
Hundreds. Of not craft landing, of course, but actual contact with them, many.
Are they doing this with other people on this planet?
I think that they are, but the problem that we've got is how complex the contact is. So a lot of the contact is buried behind screen memory. And because it's buried behind some narrative, like some person will have a dream, they think they're on a craft, they think they're flying the craft, what will happen is that the person will either believe that they're on a craft, flying a craft, or dreaming about a craft, but that wasn't happening at all. They were given a screen narrative by the extraterrestrials. I would suggest there's a large amount of people globally that are being contacted, but they don't know because of the screen memories.
You would also channel the ZETAs, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. So I do public sittings. Generally 30 or 40 people will come and they'll talk to the ZETAs. And that's how a few of the books came about. So a scientist came and spoke to the ZETAs, and we wrote a book called A Primer of the Zeta Race. And then the second book, which is about 700 pages, is called The Zeta Interviews, and we give those 2 books away for free.
Paul's website, of course, is linked up at coasttocoastam.com, and it's called thezetaconnection.com. A couple of his books include The Zeta Race, Inside the Hive Mind, and also a primer of the Zeta Race as well. Would you say that the Zetas are friendly, Paul?
I would suggest that the Zetas themselves are friendly, or they look very much like some grey race, but they're actually not. Although they're part of a species, of the grey species, they are not the actual greys, the ones that are accused of doing all the abductions. So The Zetas themselves have only been positive, have always been honest in their dealings with people, have done the healings, have come when they said that they would. When they said they'd bring a craft, they did. Basically, you can only ever take somebody at their word.
Absolutely. Now, this is it's an amazing thing. Now, tell me about the relationship with Cyan, who we will meet shortly.
I was contacted by Cyan many years ago, and we started to talk. She was telling me that she had extraterrestrial contact. I didn't remember at all that I'd met her on craft, and we started talking, and a lot of the experiences she had, I realised that I'd had them when I was younger myself. She came across and did a sitting with the Zetas, and she realised that after talking to them, that they knew things about her that I didn't know. And so when they told her that she'd been on craft and what had happened to her on craft, she knew that what she experienced was real as well. Cyan and I definitely are people that look for evidence, and any time we work with the Zetas, or we say, that the Zetas have come and healed somebody or whatever, we ask people to write testimonies and, sort of to evidence that process.
Paul, what do the Zetas want with us?
I would suggest that the Zetas are looking to try to support humanity to be the best that they can possibly be. They see that on the timeline that the capacity for humans to have problems in their own development, to move past that massive blockage that we have as a race, and move into a new level of consciousness, but in the physical 3D state, means that we need to have beings with us that can help us to identify what is a better type of consciousness to have, rather than the one that is very three-dimensional based in regards to, conflict and problems, all these issues that are occurring on the Earth at the moment.
Paul, when we Earthlings see UFOs, spot UFOs, what % of them could be Zeta craft?
That's a massive question, because a lot of the things that people see, so imagine this, you're looking into the night sky, you're doing CE5, and you're generating consciousness, and consciousness reflects back to a group of people or yourself what you want to see. You have a desire to see craft, and so often consciousness will reflect back itself. So to say, well, are these craft from the Zetas? Yes, there are craft. Are these craft a construct of the human mind? They can be as well. This is why when people see a craft, if you can see the craft by doing a calling in process like CE5, they should be asking the craft to come in closer, much closer, so that ultimately they can have good evidence of contact rather than just seeing flashes of light in the sky.
What do they think of us, Paul?
They think that humans as a race have massive potential to be much better than they are. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the human race. It just means that they understand that in consciousness, our abilities are so high that each of us has the potential to be so much more that they would easily, work with people. They like to spend, giving information, time giving the information. That's why that the information's in the books, because, and we give them away for free, because we want people to read the books and understand what is the potential of human beings to understand how to live in a relationship with this planet. And that's probably one of the most important things.
Paul, were your parents aware of this episode since you were 18 months old when these were happening? Did they know what was going on?
No. And when I actually did speak to them about it, they've passed over now, but when I had spoken to my parents about it, they knew something was going on, but they were too terrified to talk to me about it. I had to basically face it and go through it myself.
How old were you when you attempted to talk to them about this?
I started talking to them when I was about 40. So they would come into the house, and I would see them as a distortion, not as a full-form physical being. And in doing so, I would talk to them and say, is there anything that you'd like to talk to me about? Because obviously you always challenge your own cognitive state. Am I seeing something? Is this really happening? You should always be challenging what's going on. And that's why when I got to the point where I was able to get them to evidence themselves by giving other people, contact or healing or even being in a craft, that's when I started to really, work towards getting a better line of communication with them. And what they did was they taught me a method for contacting them, and that method's called heterodyning, and it doesn't have anything to do with CE5. And that's a method that they prefer for contact because it has to do with like binaural beats, but using consciousness to do it.
Tell us a little bit more. How would you contact them? In a different state of mind or something? Do you go into like a trance state?
So what happens is every day you breathe. Breathing is the first thing that you do when you're born and the last thing that you do when you pass over. Internally in your breath is harmonics, and those harmonics are very, very subtle. Every time you breathe a level of harmonics. And so if you understand how to use your breath work correctly, you can create a sustained level of energy around yourself. Once you do that, we call that a sphere technique. Once you create that sphere, you can then populate it with your own consciousness and seek out contact with other beings. These heterodyne states are where you start to then interact with other beings. Now, of course, you need to evidence that because you don't know whether it's a spirit person coming to you or not, because spirits also use a similar process to heterodyning, but a lot of that contact with them is mind to mind or mental mediumship. And so I suggest that most people can learn how to do this process, but it's more about spending the time learning about your own energy, learning about how to breathe properly, learning about your harmonics, learning about how to hold your own energy, and also how to breathe correctly, and go into those very clear states of stillness that the extraterrestrials require for contact.
Why do they still cloak and dagger and not make themselves so public to us?
Yeah, that's a good question. The whole cloak and dagger thing is to do with, I'm sure you've heard of Gary Nolan, and he has been tasked to do some work with what are the effects of humans when they come near craft. And what we've found is, myself included, when the Zetas came, I would often in the beginning get burnt down the side of my face. And so we had to work out, well, why is this happening? And it's to do with frequency. And so the whole reason for the cloak and dagger is because if they truly came, either humans would do two things. They'd either be physically harmed by the technology that the Zetas have, or they would probably black out. A person would just go unconscious because their level of consciousness is fairly high. And when you're in their energy, their heterodyne state is so high that you as a human would have problems staying conscious. And so most times you'll notice when they do contact people, people are asleep.
We've been talking to Paul Hamlin, and now we're talking to Cyan. They are both lifelong contactees of the ZETA race and have been clearing conscious recall of their contact with the beings that they worked with. They are both deep trance mediums, also working with spirit guides to assist others. Paul, as we mentioned, his earliest was when he was 18 months old. Cyan's memory was from 4 years old, and here she is with us. Hello, Cyan. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having us.
And let me ask you, so you were 4 years old when this all started for you?
Well, that's the earliest memory I have. I mean, who knows what age, the contact actually started. But, that's my earliest memory, around 4 years old, maybe 4.5. And you met Paul when he was a little boy.
And you met Paul when he was a little boy. 4 years old. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a little boy. And you met Paul when he was a lit
Yeah, twice, actually. It was actually twice. The first occasion, I have sketchy memory, but what I do remember is that we were just observed by the beings, just naturally playing with toys together in the same space. I think it's always a bit crazy when you look back on these events and you wonder, as a small child, why on earth you didn't find that unusual. That you're suddenly finding yourself in the middle of the night playing with somebody who shouldn't be in your house, surrounded by extraterrestrials. But I think when most contactees, as they get older, they realise that the realisation of the gravity of what's taken place is kind of shielded from our minds until we're mature enough to be able to process it. That was the first time when we were around 4 years old, and the second time when I was around 8 years old. That was quite a long story, but it involved a screen memory, and it was hidden from me up and only till about 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they'd managed to work a screen memory in of quite a normal event that had a completely false ending. It was almost like a screen memory that was designed to fail. And when I realised that the way this memory had ended was not the truth of the situation, I immediately realised it was a screen memory. It was just alarmingly obvious in the context I was working with them by that point. And the memory dropped, and I remembered the entire experience of being on board with him. The interesting thing about those two experiences was that we were both more or less the same age on board craft, when the reality is there's a bit of an age gap between Paul and I. But they said they only did that twice, and that's all that we can remember.
Paul said he thinks he had about 100 contactees with them. Do you recollect how many times this has happened to you?
Oh, goodness. No. Dozens and dozens of times. I wouldn't suggest it's in the hundreds for me. Definitely less than the hundreds. But I'm maybe missing a few years, and Paul's got a few more years on me to collect those memories. But no, I'd suggest that my contact, although it has been fairly significant, it's not been of the same extreme level as I suggest he's had in his lifetime.
Cyan, was there a point where you told your parents something very strange is happening to me?
I had conversations about paranormal events. We've addressed spirit contact, and extraterrestrial contact has been talked about, but not in any significant way at this point.
Why do you believe they're contacting people like Paul, like you?
I think, as Paul said, that there are many, many individuals being contacted, far more than we'll ever realize, and have been for a very long time. As to why that's taking place, well, the ZETAs do tell us that a large proportion of the human population are hybrid human, which means, from their perspective, that the consciousness that forms the human is part spirit, from spirit realm, and partly from an extraterrestrial race. And by a free will agreement with the spirit people, which is absolutely necessary for that to happen, the consciousness of the extraterrestrial combines with the consciousness of the spirit person, and that forms the consciousness of the hybrid human. As to whether or not somebody realizes that that's the case for them, well, that's for somebody to work out as they go along. But I know, having worked with many, many, many contactees and experiences over the years with Paul, that there are so many people out there staring at the sky at night, feeling that they don't belong on this planet, thoughts that can't be evidenced in any way, but they feel so strongly drawn towards. Who knows how many people out there are being contacted.
Is it conceivable that you are part of a hybrid program?
Oh, in consciousness, yes. when people talk about hybrids, I think there's a distinction to be made that doesn't always necessarily get made. People talk about biological hybrids, and then they talk about hybrids of consciousness. And the Zetas talk about hybrids of consciousness existing on this planet. They don't ever refer to biological hybrids being on this planet.
Have you ever been aboard a Zeta craft, Cyan?
Yes, I have. And I recall it without any need for hypnosis.
Can you describe what it was like for us, what it looks like?
The memories that Paul and I both share of one particular occasion, the interior of the craft, from my perspective, I was within, it was a circular space. It had a domed roof. I was within a curvilinear room that would follow, from my perspective of where I was, it would follow the curve of the space that I was in. The one wall of that, if you like, was see-through. Maybe it was. I don't think it was glass, but it had, you could see through it. It was transparent, and it looked into a circular inner space. That space was very dark, and in the centre of that space there was some domed console at the two ends, opposite ends of this space on the diameter, if you like. There were exit entry points, and every now and again, Zeta beings would walk through and up to that dome, and just walk off again. Obviously, checking up on something or other, never interacting with myself or the other humans in this we'll say glass room. These rooms or container areas, that's what it felt like at the time. They were all around. All around the periphery of this circular space. On one occasion, I was in there with Paul, and a very tall, 7 foot, easily 7 foot tall Zeta came straight up to the glass, and he put his face right up to I'll call it the window, and it was very alarming, and I was probably beyond terrified at that point. Well, Paul was so obviously clearly used to being there. He simply outstretched his hand up to the being on the other side of the glass and put his hand out to me to calm me down. That's one occasion I've seen. I've been at what looks like the front of a craft before, looking out of some sort of observation panel, like what you've described as a window, but without glass. It just looks like you're looking into space. And behind me, again, it's a kind of a horseshoe shaped maybe, and you can see consoles or controls around the outside. And again, the Zetas are just, they pretty much seem to be minding their own business, just doing whatever they need to do, all very passive, very calm.
Has there ever been a point, Cyan, that you felt that their, let's say, intentions were dishonorable?
No, never.
Never felt that way?
No, never felt that way.
Oh, that's good, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you think they think of us as people?
We have many people come round to speak to them. It's a Paul sets, weekly. We have a home circle, if that's what people call it, a home circle in the mediumship world, where the same people come round every week to support the development of the medium. And the Zetas, when there's somebody new there, they always generally ask them, what is it like to be a human? Tell us, in your experience, what it's like. They're always very interested to hear from people. I don't think we've had one sitting in our own space. It's different to a public sitting, where they've not asked the person. I think they're very interested in how we think, why we think the things that we do. I think they're trying to understand us as much as we're trying to understand them. I think in many ways they're probably trying to figure out a contact protocol, just as the way humans are trying to work out the best way to introduce themselves to extraterrestrial races. If you look across the world, every culture, every society, they generally have a different way of saying hello. You know, some people shake hands, some people bow, some people, you know, kiss cheeks in France, for instance. And they're probably, you know, I think they're very interested in learning about all the different nuances of human culture, just as we are in them.
Aside of Paul, have you seen any other human beings on the craft or with the Zetas?
Yes, I have, yeah. In several different contexts. I've definitely seen other people. We did a series of energy work with a group of people at the request of the ZETAs. They invited people to come for what we call energy restoration. And on one of those occasions, there were several people that were in consciousness taken on board craft during that process. And I was on board with them. I could see exactly what was going on. And when the people came back round, if you like, to normality, you know, they jumped off the bed. You know, I've been on craft, and you know, I was able to say yes, I was there with you, and we've both been able to describe exactly what we saw, what happened. You know, it's been very interesting. The times outside those kind of more public events on my own, I've definitely seen other people on board craft. Nothing terrible going on. It's just more of an observation process with the ZETA, as far as I've observed, as far as I've experienced.
Tell us about your work as an artist and what contributions the Zetas have made to that.
Yeah, that started about 10 years ago. I'm not, professionally trained artist. It's something I've always just enjoyed doing when I have some spare time. Although of late that's increased. But about 10 years ago, I realized that the paintings that I was creating were not coming from me. I found myself working in an altered state. I developed working in altered states of spirit people decades ago. And what I found was that when I was painting, I was finding myself in a similar sort of altered state. When I then first met Paul again in person on this planet, he was able to look at the paintings and tell me exactly what I experienced with the paintings as I created them. He was able to point out all sorts of intricacies about them that I had absolutely no idea about, and had no idea I'd even created. And then what we began to find is that people, when they viewed the works, one case in point was at an exhibition. I had a series of 5 paintings that I exhibited there, and people would just stand in front of them and become absolutely mesmerized, you know, to the point they were in an altered state themselves. And we began to realize that they were transferring the energy through me as I was painting or creating the images. And some of these images, they're highly constructed. I wake up, there's an image in my mind, and like a song that just won't leave your head. You know how you get a song on replay. This image would just be at the forefront of my mind, in my mind's eye, until I'd drawn it, painted it, however it came out. And then other times, these paintings, they just flow. They just come out of nowhere. And, people come around to the house, they just stood there and started crying in front of the paintings. And we obviously asked them about it. And yes, that's what they've been doing with them. And it's very lovely to be able to create that.
Are there pictures of some of your work on your website?
Yes, there are. Yeah, we do have a section I've popped in there where people can look at the work if they want to.
Did they ever talk about a propulsion system, Cyan?
Not to me, no. I believe they have talked about in their own methods of their craft, construction and technology. That information is in the primer of the ZETA race, if anybody wants to read about that. The scientist helped put that lot together. That's so not my area. I do the art and I leave the science to somebody else.
Have they taken you to the Zeta Reticuli star system?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Now, when you say not that you're aware of, could they have done and you just don't know?
Absolutely. I'd suggest that, yes, there is absolutely the potential for that, but I don't have any recall of that if that has happened. I'd suggest I remember, I don't know, maybe 10% of the contact. We know that there's so much more contact that we don't remember. So for whatever reason, they don't let us remember this, but they've allowed us to remember this particular contact. Who knows why they do that? But yeah, no, I don't have any conscious recall of being there.
And welcome back to Coast. We're going to take your calls with the Zeta contactees in a minute when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, Paul Hendon with us, and Cyan with us. We're going to start with calls with Paul, so when you address Tom, make sure they're for Paul as we talk about his Zeta connections. Paul, did the Zetas ever say how many civilizations are out there in the universe?
They did say that they thought, because their numbering system is different to ours, but they said that within this Milky Way galaxy, which is 100,000 light years across, there was about 1,000 civilizations.
That's a lot.
Sure is.
I had asked Cyan, she did not have an answer, but did they ever tell you their propulsion system for their craft? How did they do they bend space and time? How do they move?
Yeah, so basically they're using what's called space-time compression to move from one space to the next. So quite often a human will look up and see a craft, and then next thing you know, the craft, zipped across the sky and moved to thousands of kilometres, within a half a second. But that's because they're compressing and uncompressing time as we know it. And so for us, maybe 10 seconds has gone past, but for them, only 1 second.
This is dramatic. Are you glad this has happened to you, Paul?
That's a really good question. I think it's been really challenging because when I speak with a lot of contactees, and we have people contacting us every day, they're trying to make sense of what's going on with them. I understand what they've had to go through to get where they are, and a lot of people are now starting to see what is possible within their own lives in regards to contact. So from my own perspective, because I've got contact with them and they're able to speak through me to other people, even publicly we do this, I'm sort of thinking that there's a lot of benefit to the contact that I've had with them.
How much does our government or do governments know about what's going on?
Oh, I don't have that information. I'm sure that there's plenty of people out there that would have that information that are public.
Have they ever approached you, Paul? Government?
No.
They have not. You would think they would. You're in a basket full of knowledge.
My attitude is that we've given away a lot of information. If anybody wants to read it, they can. And if anybody wants to contact us, they can as well. So we're not worried about the information in any way. There's a lot of books that are out there, maybe, I don't know, I don't even know how many books, maybe 10 books that we've written so far. And that information's out there, and the first 2 books are freely available. So, there's a lot of information in those books.
Let's start with some calls for you east of the Rockies. Brian is with us in Indianapolis. Hi, Brian.
Hey, George. How you guys doing today?
Fine, birthday boy. How are you?
I'm all right, man. Hey, listen, I'm kind of hesitant to kind of ask this, but Paul, I heard you mention earlier that you think that people can make contact with them. So my wife and I, we're stargazers, as the Coast family knows. So how would we go about, and I'm not really sure if I want to do this or not, but I'm sure Chris will be all in for it. How would I go about contacting them, and what would I expect if they contact me? And I might have a follow-up question, George.
Okay, Eric.
All right, so
Brian,
the very first most important thing that everyone would need to do is you need to learn about your own energy first in meditation, learning about how do I feel right now? Because when you're going to step forward to make contact, you must understand what the energies are that are coming to you. You can have spirit people coming to you, or you can have astral energies or astral entities. And so you want to make sure that you understand fully your own energy so that when you step into the process of creating contact, that when your energy shifts around you, that you know the difference between your own energy and their energy. They're not going to come to people physically. They're going to come to people in mind-to-mind contact via consciousness, and they're going to do that if they know that you understand the difference between their energy and your own energy. Spirit people do this all the time. Spirit people work with mediums. They evidence themselves quite clearly. Extraterrestrials can do the same.
Any follow-up, Brian? Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. So we don't meditate. We always say we want to. We feel like we're in tune with the universe. So it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, "Hey, we see you up in the sky. Come and talk to us," then, isn't it? Now, and I'll take this answer off the air, George. Y'all have a good day.
All right, Brian. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because what it's all a bit useless if you've just got something going on around you and you've invited it to you, but you don't know what's going on. And if these beings are using screen memory technology or, energy distortions or fabric recreation or the phenomenon in ways where they're trying to contact you psychologically, then there's an expectation from them that you have spent time getting to understand your own energy. It's not about getting instant contact. It's about building contact slowly so that it's safe and evidential.
Let's go to Jim, British Columbia in Canada. Paul, go ahead. Hi, Jim.
Hi, George. Hi, Paul. Thank you very much for taking my call, you guys. Got a kind of an off-the-wall question here. I don't know if I had contact with the Zetas or not. I've had a contact with an off-worlder guy a couple of times, 2 different people, and they left a triangle on my finger right in front of my eyes. That was in 2020. But I had them hammer on the window. I had a picture that I took, and this is very, very odd. I had tagged the picture. This was right when we had all the heat here in BC. It was 49 Celsius. I didn't know what this object was up in the sky, but I tagged the picture. I took a bunch of pictures in the same area, and I tagged the picture and wrote UAV next left, not because it was, I didn't know what it was, so I just put it there for my own interest. And when I went to save the picture, I could go reset or save on the picture. When I went to save the picture, I hit save, and what looks exactly like 2, I don't know, I guess they're gray alien hands waving at me through the window of my car. It's clear as day. I show people, it convinces them instantly, wow, look at that. I don't know. I didn't do it. Somebody could have played a trick, but they'd have had to go to the future and done it from the future when I was going to tag that picture. And then I had them, what seemed to be something, hammering on my window. If you could believe that. I'm on the 6th floor in the apartment, outside the window, bam, 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 bam. But it wasn't in our reality. It sounded like it was about 2 or 3 feet out from the window, and loud hammering. And my building is completely silent with seniors here. There's no noise whatsoever. But I was kind of like soaking this in, and then I sort of was startled at one point when they did it. This was last July, so I clapped my hands really loud 3 or 4 times to kind of say, I can hear you guys outside the window. And then I heard this head away from the window, as if they were flying away from the window out into the night. You could hear them, bam, 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 and it disappeared as it went. It was very odd. And I thought, well, I don't know. It wasn't disturbing or anything. I thought, well, I don't know if that was them or not, but the picture that I have with those hands through the window, I guarantee you, if you saw it, you'd say, wow, I don't know what that is, but it sure looks like UFO hands through my open window in my car.
Are we being visited, Paul, by other races, UFO races?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd suggest to that caller that they, if they want to, they can send me that picture and I'll have a look at it.
Through your website?
Yeah, they can send it to ZETA_events@hotmail.com.
Okay, and the website is thezetaconnection.com in case you don't get it, Jim. Lots of strange things out there, that's for sure. Did you have many pictures, or did you have artists sketch what you've seen, Paul?
We called craft in and we took a picture of it. It's a triangular-shaped craft. It was about 50 metres above the house. It was taken at night. The craft is dematerialised, but the technology of these days of cameras is quite good. We've still got the outline, the shape. We've had a craft come down over the house, and we were told we were allowed to record it via audio, and so it was using a sonic type of sounding process to come down. Anybody could have heard the craft coming down. It was quite loud. It was in broad daylight. So we've got sort of certain types of evidence that's only for us because we like to have that information as well.
Carlos is with us in Miami. Welcome to the show. Hi, Carlos.
Good morning. Good morning, George. Good morning, Paul. I have a question. If you recall Betty and Barney Hill, they also, Betty recalls that, she was walking around the craft and she looked at this recessed area and there were floating spheres, silver spheres. And she asked the beings what were those, and they told her that was where the part of the universe that they came from. And she says she didn't know where that was because she didn't study astronomy, that there were people on Earth that did study just particularly astronomy. And so they told her, if you don't know what system that's from, you don't know where we're from. Now, eventually they found out that it was Zeta Reticuli. Did the beings, Paul, where you were in, did they tell you or showed you the system like they showed Betty and Barney? Or did at all, the second question would be, would they have asked or told you that they also have met Betty and Barney Hill, or that ever came up, or you even asked that question?
In regard to the first question, they told us that themselves. And generally when they first come to us, they were clicking. There was lots of clicking noises. We weren't able to record them speaking, but we didn't know what was being said. That was a problem. In regard to Betty and Barney Hill, when Kathleen Martin spoke to the Zetas through me, they indicated that they knew of Kathleen and her generational line. So they never mentioned Betty or Barney personally, but, there's a lot of other information, of course. It's very difficult to give all the information out right now because we're very limited with time. There's a lot of things going on, especially for the planet at the moment.
Next up, let's go to Shani in California. Welcome to the show. Hi, Shani.
Hi, guys. Well, I'm asking a question that I actually asked about a month ago to another speaker that you had, but she didn't know anything about it. But it relates to the Zetas, so maybe you can help me.
Okay.
So I heard on that show, Cosmic Disclosure, there's this guy, Tim, who's like a ambassador to the ETs. He's from Germany. And he's been told that this crazy theory that the tunnel of light that we see when we die is actually an installation that's been planted by the Zetas to sort of keep our souls trapped, to keep returning back to Earth and reincarnating on Earth rather than, jumping around the universe after we leave our bodies and stuff. And, I mean, that's a pretty far-out theory, but do you know anything about that, or have you heard that?
Yeah, so basically, when a person leaves their physical body and they move towards spirit realm, there's a lot of different belief systems that people have, and they carry them with them. The Zetas have said that they do not in any way capture humans. They do not in any way work with human souls. They don't want human souls. They don't need human souls. And the problem is that a lot of people are using that type of information to instill fear into the human race. Because, of course, at our core inner being, we all know that we need, when we pass over, that we need to travel somewhere. And so to be told that there's the capacity for a person to be trapped also creates a lot of fear. The Zetas have said it's not true.
We've got Michael now in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hello, Michael. Go ahead.
Hello, George. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Sure
this
thing.
evening. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank
I'd
you.
like to ask if there were any other places in Australia, because I've been all over Australia, that this type of thing has, you've experienced it with other people that you know, be it in New South Wales or the center of the country or the western part of the country.
Any other spots in Australia where these connections occur?
There's a lot of places globally where there is a lot of contact. And I would suggest that of course, the areas with the least amount of EMF, the least amount of interference, is where the craft will come. It is based around who is there at the time. We've been with other people in other groups, and the craft has flashed up quite large. It just depends on where you are and how clear the night sky is, and how much capacity there is for the craft to easily materialize into the three-dimensional space.
Have you ever been scared, Paul, by them?
I was scared. Remember I said that I had three of them take me down when I was younger?
Yeah.
I was terrified, but the difference was that they were basically trying to get me onto a craft. When I was much older, they would come in and say, listen, do you want to come onto the craft? And I would just roll back over and go to sleep. And then they'd keep sort of saying, you need to come out. And I would. So it got to the point where I wasn't worried anymore. I would suggest that in the beginning, when I didn't know what I knew now, yes, I was very concerned about it. This is why we spend a lot of time talking with people, because I think people have read a lot of information on the internet that's untrue, and a lot of people have a lot of negative connotations about extraterrestrial contact.
But you think they're safe? They don't have any agenda?
So far, so let's imagine that there are 1,000 civilizations. We only work with one, and that they so far have given evidence. They have definitely, been upfront in the information that they've given. They've come when they said that they would. And so, you really get to the point where you need to take somebody at their word and build a relationship on that. I've said to them, if they ever do anything that I find to be negative or unfriendly towards humans, that I'll terminate contact with them.
And let's go to first-time caller Barry in Florida. Barry, welcome to the program.
George, I'm first-time caller, but I listen to your program quite often.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question for Zian. In her conversations with these aliens, does she ever ask them, do they believe in God?
That's a great question. Cyan, has that question of do they believe in another creator ever come up?
It comes up quite frequently in especially the public settings. Everyone's always very interested to know their take on that. And yes, they believe in a source consciousness that is responsible for the creation of everything. They don't use the concept of God as humans do, because they're not human, but they definitely have their own belief structure centered around a source consciousness that is the creator of all.
That's fantastic. Cyan, I want to thank you and Paul for being part of the program. Good luck with your continued travels with the Zetas, and get one of them maybe one day and get them on the show. And as we talk about UFOs and extraterrestrial life, we always have to remember the late Brad Steiger. If you want to listen to our show ad-free, 24/7, access audio archives, live chat with me, and much more, you need to become a Coast Insider now. So you're telling me your grandmother, who died a few weeks ago, came and visited you last night in your bedroom, and you're not scared? Are extraterrestrials living among us? I don't know if it's true or not, folks, but we're going to find out. If you enjoy stories like these and want to learn more about the mysteries of the universe with me, become a Coast Insider now to access hundreds of our archived shows to listen anytime, anywhere. Sign up now at coasttocoastam.com/Coast Insider. That's coasttocoastam.com/Coast Insider.